Okay. Okay, so back to our story at hand. So we're imagining that you're you're staying home and you're watching movies. And I want you to think about this scenario. You don't normally watch movies, right? Because you're normally not sick, you're at work and you're too busy going to work and going to school, you never get to see movies, right? So you get off work for the day, and if you have flu, you're going to be off for a couple days. And so what are you going to do while you lie in bed? You can't sleep all the time, so you decide, I'm going to watch. Okay, so how good's the first movie?
Really good.
So what's it going to be, a scale of 0 to 10?
9.
Just that movie.
9.
9, okay. So what's your total utility? Okay, so now you watch the second movie. That movie's over. How good's the second movie for you?
9.
Still a 9. She's psyched. What's her total utility?
0.
9 plus 9, which is? You watch a third movie. Now you're 4.5 hours in. Are the movies as good anymore? You watch a fourth movie.
7.
You watch a fifth movie.
It's a long day.
Yeah. 5.
She's sick. What else is she going to do? I can tell you from being sick before, well, when I had my surgery and I wasn't supposed to do anything, I was so bored of watching TV. Sixth movie.
3.
Seventh movie.
3.
Eighth movie.
What if all those movies already like make one day?
No, you keep going. You're on the next day, you wake up, watch
Well, if I wake
that
up the next day, maybe they'd be.
No, keep going. It's in a row.
2.
Next movie.
2.
Next movie.
0.
Next movie.
2.
You go from 0 to 2.
Real quick.
Next one.
It's really good.
10.
Now she's
It
just
was really
screwing.
good.
Now she's just screwing with me. So what's happening in this? This is a much better behaved response, right?
Getting bored.
What's happening is slowly her total utility is going up, 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 up. Eventually it goes. Eventually it goes down, and this is something we call diminishing marginal utility. And what we know is that eventually always utility will go down as you consume more. Think about it this way: if you don't have any of something, and if it's not something you dislike, then it's pretty good to have one of it, right? The more you add, the less good it is over time. So someone said we were going to use this to explain our all-you-can-eat buffet. What happens? Why don't people just keep eating? Because they have diminishing marginal utility, which we can say is based on a physical trigger, but it's also a psychological trigger as well, right? Because even with something like food or a movie where you can't get physically sick of it, you can get emotionally and psychologically sick of watching films or TV or anything. Too much of a good thing is still too much, right? That's an old adage. So we can say the same thing here. Do we find the same thing's true with marginal utility? What happens? It starts off and it goes down, 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 down. Eventually it crosses 0. And what's happening here? Once again, when marginal utility equals 0, total utility is?
Maximum.
Okay. Very well-behaved utility functions she exhibited until the end. Right? Very well. Then she started listening to someone. So, in and of itself, it's not too interesting, but it does tell us another reason the demand curve would slope downwards, right? Because as quantities get lower, even if price wasn't a factor, what happens to your demand as quantities get higher? It decreases regardless of price, right? What do you think once we add in price, what's going to really happen? Then it's really going to decrease, right? So this is another justification for why the demand curve is downward sloping, because people have diminishing marginal usefulness or utility for the items they consume. The more you consume, the less you want to consume it. That means if you're looking at buying things, the more you consume, the less you psychologically want to consume it. So to get you to pay for it, what do you have to do to price? Drop it in order to encourage more consumption. So this lets us explain all-you-can-eat buffet. So if you're an all-you-can-eat buffet owner, how do you want to price your trip to the buffet? How much do you want to charge people? How do you want to figure that out? You don't need to charge them a lot, do you? All you need to know is what the average person consumes and charge them for the profit margin you want to make on the average customer. Because you know over a large number of customers what's going to happen. Some customers will eat more than they pay you. Many customers will eat less. But on average, you'll always make that profit margin that you're looking for. Another interesting little factoid. What do you think's happened to the price of all-you-can-eat buffets as Americans have gotten fatter?
Higher.
It's gone up because people eat more now than they did in the past. The average consumer consumes more. That means to make the profit margin, you have to charge more. And even Vegas charges more for all-you-can-eat buffets than they used to. Right? When I was a kid, Vegas, it was free if you stayed at the hotel, right? Sometimes 99 cents for the seafood and lobster buffet, right? But now it's like, last time I was in Nevada, I think we were paying, if we wanted the buffet, it was going to be like $19 for dinner or something.
I paid 50 at the MGM.
Huh?
I paid 50 at the MGM.
50 at the MGM? But that was probably a good buffet.
It was good.
It's 52 at the Rio for a seafood buffet.
See, I don't go to Vegas, I just drive through. How much is it at the Rio? How much? Sorry.
52?
$52.
Only from 1 to 4.
So there's a place I almost went to with the missus in San Jose when we were down there this month or so ago for a water polo tournament. It's a Brazilian barbecue. All you can eat meat. And it was going to be, I think it was $50 a plate. And I was thinking, this is worth it. Then I realized I'm not all that hungry. So it's probably, and I asked my wife, she's like, I'm not that hungry either. I was like, well, probably not the day to try it. It was funny, the place we ended up, which wasn't all you could eat, we spent more than 50 per person on. So we might as well have gone to all you can eat and just had whatever we wanted to eat because it would have been cheaper than where we ended up. But yeah, I've been wanting to do Brazilian barbecue because they bring it to you on like a sword,
Stick or something?
on a big sword, basically, right? A skewer.
And then they just
And
like chop it up and like.
they just pull it off, you know, and you can get, I think the night we were looking, it was filet mignon, lamb, 12 different types of meat,
Right.
right?
Those class burritos back on.
The sugar's going down. So by the way, this is an interesting model, but it's actually a fairly silly model at this point because how many of you only consume one item at a time?
Depends on the buy.
Come on. Normally we make decisions when we're consuming between rating different items relative to other items, right? And so the usefulness of this model is very limited because what we really want to do is be able to compare different consumption bundles. So keeping with our food theme for the evening. By the way, you guys tell me while I'm erasing, how can we apply this model to why newspapers are sold in a box where you reach in and grab any number of papers you want, but candy sold in a machine that gives you one piece at a time?
Because you only need one copy of the information.
You only need one copy of the paper unless you're a coupon person. You can consume, you can store candy and it's useful, right? So unless you're an artist or a couponer, newspaper is very invaluable to you except for one copy at a time. So it's easier, you're not going to make as many losses on the a-holes who take more than one copy. Although it's funny, being a former newspaper person, I know that the coupon days, even back when I was a newspaper kid in the 80s, on the coupon days, people would steal papers from the box, right? So what I would do is I didn't stock many papers on coupon days or on Sundays, but on the other days of the week, I stocked a whole bunch of papers because no one was going to rip off extras. Right? But every now and then you get some a-hole mom that has a paper mache project for their little kid, and they're like, oh, all we need is a quarter and we can get 20 papers, right, and do the whole project, so it always
I
sucks.
would think they were just designs that would just pop out one. I do think that it wouldn't take that much more just to pop out with one paper at a time.
Now,
So who likes In-N-Out? A few people, okay. Let's pick on, what's your name?
Jose,
Jose, okay. Jose, what do you like, what are 3 things you get when you go to In-N-Out?
animal fries,
You get animal fries, okay, what do they cost?
I don't even know.
Let's say they cost $2. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay. What else do you like?
Cheeseburger,
Cheeseburger, what's that cost?
$4, $3.
Okay. And you like a drink?
Yeah.
Soda?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll say that costs $1. So in here we're going to have total utility and marginal utility. Total utility, marginal utility, total utility, marginal utility. And this is going to be 0, non-existent, 0, non-existent, 0, non-existent. Okay. So let's start with, what do you like best of these things?
Cheeseburger,
Cheeseburger, okay. So let's start with the cheeseburger. I'm going to tell you, you have, well, let's just do this without regard to how much money you have. Well, no, you're limited, okay. So let's say that you only have $10 to spend on food and you've decided ahead of time you're going to spend all of your money or as close to it as possible on eating tonight at In-N-Out. So what I want you to tell me is, how happy does eating the first cheeseburger make you?
pretty happy.
Okay, so what's the happiness? Give me a number.
10,
10. Okay, so your total is what?
10.
Okay, how about a second burger?
7,
And what's your total?
17,
Okay. How about a third burger?
4,
Okay. How about a fourth burger?
probably a 0,
And a fifth burger? Do we need to go there?
no.
You gonna puke?
Yeah.
Are we good? What's the next thing you want to get?
Soda,
Okay. What's the happiness from the first soda?
10,
Second soda?
10,
You're like me. Third soda?
8,
Fourth soda?
6,
Fifth soda?
3,
Sixth soda?
with sugar, that's it.
Okay. Animal fries. What's the happiness from the first animal fry?
10,
Second animal fry?
6,
Third?
2,
Fourth?
0,
So first off, let's go shopping. Let's see how you spend your $10. Cool? So first off, what's the first thing you should buy?
cheeseburgers,
What's the first thing you should buy?
Soda.
Look at the numbers. Soda. Why? His marginal utility, that's all we really can care about, is 10 units from having that soda, right? So we do -1. Why is this 10 better than this 10 or this 10?
This is the cheapest.
It's cheapest. So what we want to know is marginal utility per dollar spent. Well, for soda, it's easy because the marginal utility per dollar is what? 1. So it's always going to be exactly what his marginal utility already is. So here we're going to find that it's going to be 5. It's going to be for 2, it would be 3, 1, still 0. Here we're going to find that it's going to be 3.33. What's this one? 2.5? 1.3, I think, and 0. So what we're going to compare is the marginal utility per dollar spent always. So you're going to start with the thing that you like the most, the thing that makes you the happiest, and that's going to be a soda, so you end up with a soda. What's the next thing? Well, can you consume this soda again? So you have to move here, right?
Yeah.
So now it's 10, 3, 3, and 5. What is it? What do you buy next?
So,
You still have money to spend?
yeah.
Okay, what are you buying next? 5, 3, 3, and 8.
Animal price?
No?
Choose
Soda.
So you're giving about 10 sodas?
He is. It's his numbers. What's next? Soda. Fortunately, he still has money left, right? Now what's next? 5, 3, 3, and 3. Animal fries. Does he still have money?
Yeah.
So what's next? 3, 3, 3, and 3.
Cheeseburger.
Notice I'm taking off the full dollar amount, right? Okay, so now he's 6, 9. He has enough for what?
Soda.
He could possibly get this as well, but he's broke, right? So what's his consumption bundle? 5 sodas, cheeseburger, and an animal fry.
I really think we're really good candy, dude. I don't have more candy anymore now.
You don't want any more candy?
I don't ruin it. I don't put that away. I can look at it.
That is so awesome. Next week I'll bring you a big candy bar. Just for you, Tim.
Ralph all over the room.
Okay, so you get how I did this though? It's really inconsequential what he gets. It's whether you can determine the proper bundles. And the reason we have to do per dollar is because we need to make them comparable. The reason we have to do a soda at the end is because we only have $1, right? Otherwise, something called Joel's rule of equal marginal utilities comes in, which means if you have 2 equal marginal utilities and you can afford both items, choose the one you have less of. Because I think people prefer diversity over non-diversity. But that's just me, that's not an economic rule, that's why I call it Joel's rule, right? It's just my way of arbitrating the decision, right, for problems or something like that. Any questions on how to do it? This isn't actually difficult, it's just you need to see it once or twice. Okay? So this is how people make decisions about sets. There is a problem with this approach though, because what happens is you end up with this happening. And if you had known this was happening, would this ever have happened? 5 sodas, a cheeseburger, and a fry?
Yeah.
He's like, hell no, right? And that's because, can we treat your consumption of soda, cheeseburger, and animal fries as separate individual occurrences, truly?
No.
Sometimes your happiness with something is determined by what you consume with it. Like I would argue, if I'm going somewhere, if I don't get the soda, it's not worth getting anything else. And I think that was your perspective as well, but you just overplayed your hand, right? And so your ability to enjoy a thing of French fries is probably related to your ability to wash it down with something. In fact, I had a homeless guy the other week when I was out at the taco truck, and he told me, he came up and asked for some tacos. I said, yeah, that's fine, and he's like, can you get me a soda? And I said, well, I don't want to get you a soda, basically. And he's like, well, then I don't want tacos. Because he's like, I can't eat the tacos without a soda to wash it down. I'm like, no, the problem's not getting you soda. It's that I've got one in the car that I'm not using. You want that one. And then he, because he's mentally disabled too, he started crying because it was orange and not Coca-Cola. Our homelessness problem is predicated on mental health issues.
What is it, like 85% of the population?
It was very unfortunate. It was very disappointing because this young man was obviously mentally ill. And he was probably on drugs on top of it, but he was mentally ill. He had the mentality of a 6 or 7 year old, maybe, right? And so literally, I told my wife when I gave him the orange soda, because I didn't have Coke, right? And I realized it mattered to him. I would have just bought him a Coke, but I was already, my stuff was in the car. It was the last thing I was doing. And he literally cried like one of my kids when he didn't get what he wanted, right? It wasn't like the cry of an adult man who's 28 years old or whatever he is. It was the cry of a little kid, like, I didn't get my way. And it just was like, it sucks, Almost went and gave the guy money to give him a Coke, but then I figured the taco truck driver would stiff the money and pocket it when I turned around.
So did he?
Because they do that. Yeah, he sat down and ate tacos. I had to serve him the tacos and serve him the Coke because he didn't get up from the chair. So that was always fun. It is what it is. I didn't offer him alcohol. Normally I have whiskey in the car. So.
Because that would have made it a lot
Well, I didn't
better.
have anything in the car. I probably would have. But I used to keep stuff, but I don't tend to keep anything in the car anymore. But especially in the winter, whiskey keeps you warm.
Listen to the 70s would make you colder. Yes.
So let's just look at this. I want to amplify one more thing. We're almost done. What do you do if, this portion of your data set's erased?
Can you extrapolate?
And you want to calculate the marginal utility of going from 1 to 4 units. You can't say that it is 14, or what is that going to be? 24, can you? That'd be too simplistic. So marginal utility actually has a formula. So marginal utility is equal to the change in total utility between 2 points divided by the change in quantity over the same 2 points. So if we want to do the change from 1 to 4, then we end up with, let's see, 10 minus 6, or sorry, 10 minus 34 over 1 minus 4, which is going to be equal to 24 over, 3? Which is equal to what? 8. And so what we're really doing is we're saying the average marginal utility from 1 to 4 units of consumption is 8 per time. Why do we have to do that? Because we have missing data. Sometimes you don't get clean data sets that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This doesn't mean as much in marginal utility because normally you do consume 1 movie, 2 movies, 3 movies, 4 movies. Where this is going to matter is when we take these same types of mathematical relationships and talk about firms, and we say we want to calculate the marginal cost between 1,000 units of production and 2,000 units of production. You need to remember there's a 1,000 unit change there, right? And so sometimes you're going to have to use this when we move on to theory of the firm next week. So how did we know when to stop buying from our in and out model?
Alright, what about
when we ran out of money. When else would we have stopped buying?
Full.
When it happens, starts to go negative.
When your happiness starts to go negative or it's at zero, right? If we have the whole data set and we know when he goes negative, we're not going to go negative, right? In the real world, we normally have to experience the negative to say, oh shit, I ate too much, right? But you know, in the theoretic world, we know we can stop at zero. This leads us to the idea of the rule of equal marginal utilities. If we don't have enough money to run our utility to zero in our consumption bundle, which let's be honest, when you guys go shopping, how many of you are able to shop for everything you want until you're not happy to buy anything more? Okay, at the grocery store. Any of you have enough money to go shopping, buy everything you want, and just stop because you're happy your cupboards are full? I'm in that boat. I mean, I'm sure a few of you are in that boat, especially if you're single. I'm just lucky I have some cash, right? But the reality is I haven't always been in that boat. I know what it's like to go grocery store and only have enough for black beans and some spaghetti noodles and, you know, pizza sauce that's from a can for 98 cents, right? But, you know, I can honestly say, money doesn't stop me from shopping right now. Diminishing marginal utility does for most of the things I buy. At the end of the month, I don't tend to run out of money anymore. I tend to have excess cash in my bank account because I bought everything I want. I think I was telling my morning class, one of my morning classes, the hardest thing about the holiday season, maybe it was you guys last week, the hardest thing about the holiday season is my kids have pretty much everything I'm willing to give them, right? They don't have everything they want, but they have everything I want them to have. So it's really hard to go shopping at holiday season. You've given them everything throughout the year. So this is the rule of equal marginal utilities. And hopefully I don't screw up the math. But I know some of you are looking at your books while I do this and you'll tell me if I'm wrong. So the idea is the marginal utility of two different goods that you're consuming. Marginal utility of good X divided by the price of X. So we're talking per dollar marginal utility, right? Basically, right? Should be equal to the marginal utility of good Y divided by the price of good Y. Should be equal to the marginal utility of any other goods divided by the price of those goods. What we're saying is, as close as possible, the last unit of everything in your shopping cart should give you roughly equal marginal utilities per dollar spent, if you're not hitting your income maximum. Or if you're not hitting zero, right? And even if you're hitting zero, you stop when they all equal zero. What's interesting about this is it lets us make some discussions, right? Because let's imagine we have marginal utility of bolts divided by the price of bolts. And that should be equal to the marginal utility of nuts divided by the price of nuts. And I don't mean nuts you eat, I'm thinking bolts and then the nuts you screw onto the bolt, right? So let's say that if the price of bolts goes down, let's do it this way. If PB goes down, what's that going to imply has to happen then? If the price of nuts stays the same and the price of bolts goes down, then what has to happen to keep these equal?
Marginal utility.
Of nuts is going to have to go up. Right? Because if this goes down and this was 2, 2, 1, as this goes down, so if this goes down, then this whole thing goes up, right? And so if this stays the same, to make this whole thing go up, this has to go higher. Yes? Just some basic algebra there. Don't worry if you didn't follow that, because it's not the way most people think about mathematical relationships initially. What's nice is this makes sense. Because you consume because you consume nuts and bolts together, if the price of bolts falls, are you just going to go out and buy bolts without a nut to put on it? And so the nuts have to become more useful as you have more bolts in your cabinet, right? The nice thing about this rule of equal marginal utilities, it allows us to become more sophisticated and talk about those consumption bundles, where you say, if I have a burger and fries, I better have a soda, right, in my basket. Is that fair enough? And by the way, anything on the homework or exam related to this is very simple algebra. You're given all the numbers and you say, okay, this number goes down, what's going to happen to this number? And you solve for the missing variable. So as long as you can solve for a missing variable, you're good to go. Fairly basic algebra. If you have problems with it, you can come to office hours or something. I don't want to rehash algebra in class. So let's go back. Remember, all of this is about the demand curve, right? So now we can talk about substitutes and complements through this relationship. We can talk about the fact that all goods are substitutes and complements, even if you don't think of them as direct substitutes and complements, because all things compete for your dollars, right? And you guys become very cognizant of this when you pay high gas prices. If you pay high gas prices, it disturbs your ability to buy everything else. In fact, we call this a hidden tax. Likewise, when gas prices are really low like they are right now, what's it feel like you guys just got? For many of you.
Like a bonus.
A bonus, a raise, right? Especially if you're a large consumer of fuel. If you're a small consumer of fuel, you don't give a rat's ass, and if you ride a bike, well, you didn't even notice.
I did.
You didn't notice? You ride a bike? Motorcycle or bicycle?
Bicycle.
Oh, nice, yeah. Definitely didn't notice. I drive quite a bit, so I notice the changes a little bit. I think my gas bill, normally my gas bill is $720.16 a month, and lately it's been running high fives, low sixes. So I'm off by almost $100 a month in savings, right? Which is pretty good, I think. Now some of that's skewed because I think someone's stealing gas out of my Corvette, so freaking went to get in the car. I thought I had half a tank, and then it was down to like 2. But the problem is that Corvette, it goes from half a tank to like 0 gas in no time flat. The gauge is really weird. And so I don't know whether I had just driven it enough that it went from the half to the 2 really quick, but you know, it just seemed a little quicker than normal.
That happened to me a few times, so I just got a locked.
Well, that's all well and good. I think for the Corvette, I can get a locking gas cap cheap. My 65 Volvo people steal the gas out of. The problem with that car is it's $120 for a locking gas cap. It's not something you can go down to AutoZone and buy, right? It's a very specialized part. And so, you know, and if you want one that says Volvo on it, that's like $200+ for an authentic one. But if you just want like a reproduction one made in Italy, it's $110, $120, which is insane. And so I keep thinking, how many tanks of gas do I need to go through? And I'm realizing, okay, I've lived in Stockton for 3 years. I've only lost 2 tanks of gas in the Volvo. That Volvo only holds 8 gallons, so really that's $64, so I'm ahead. So, by not getting the locking gas cap. So I can do 2 more thefts, and they never drain it completely. Well, actually they do, the last ones, but anyway. For the Volvo, they can drain that sucker dry. The Corvette and the truck when they tried to do my Suburban, apparently something went wrong on it. They broke my gas door, but they didn't get any gas out, so I don't know what happened there.
Is that your house?
Huh?
Is it from your house, the cars, the parts?
Yeah, they're in front of my house.
It was a nice neighborhood.
I don't even think about that, just getting my gas.
What?
I don't even think about that, just getting my gas.
Well, but I have a lot of cars and they sit around, right? I don't drive all of my cars every day.
How many cars do you have?
3, 4, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars right now, and then the motorcycle.
Is it a car guy?
No, I don't like cars.
You just are.
Yeah, at one point I think my high point was 14 cars. So, neighbors loved me. So, I've got very sympathetic neighbors right now, so it's been good. But let me give you guys Simon's sheet. I've got one last thing I want to talk about and then we're done.
I don't know, I'm getting pissed, because you know, like, when you have 7 between, 3 people, though. It's not that much, but they're.
Yeah.
You never about that Maserati, you talked about having like back in
I want a Maserati still. I just,
Like the poor thing.
I've been less enthralled lately for some reason. Mainly because they're releasing a diesel Maserati.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking I want a diesel Maserati. Here's why. Still gets, I believe it's cranking out 435 horsepower to the wheel.
The Gran
With-
Turismo?
The diesel Gran Turismo.
Oh, so they're actually already out there.
Oh, they released it. It's this year. It's next year's model, but it's already out. I already saw it in, I think I saw it Motor Trend or Car and Driver, and I was like, that puts my plans on hold. Because I could get a Maserati with 400 plus horsepower and something, I didn't look at the actual spec, but I'm just imagining 500-600 pounds of torque. Can you imagine the whiplash accelerating in that car? I mean, that would be fun.
How much is that new one going for next year?
I don't know what the diesel's going to be, but a normal new Maserati is 120 to 175,000. So, but I'm not going to buy a new one. I'm going to buy one just out of warranty.
Yeah.
So if you buy one just under warranty, still under warranty from up in Sacramento, from Nilo or out in the Bay Area, you're going to pay for a 4-year-old Maserati. Right at warranty is going to cost you $74,000. So almost half the price to 3/4 of the price. If you buy one that's 5 years old and well out of warranty, it'll drop down to $30,000.
What does your wife say about it?
I think if I paid $30,000 for it, she wouldn't care. It's just a car. If I go back and forth, I don't have time to work on cars anymore. I'd rather build up a car. But, there's something about the luxurious in it. And then lately I've been thinking about Rolls Royces again. I've got this problem with Rolls too. Have you ever sat in a Rolls Royce, even an old one?
I like that one, I've driven
That's sad, though.
Yeah, they're really nice. And I keep looking, for about 8 to 10K, you can buy a nice 1974, 75 Rolls that needs no smog check ever again. And you just like sink in the seat, and it's like,
The hydraulic
oh,
suspension.
it's an incredible drive. And it's a car that weighs 6,000 pounds, and even when it's 30 years old, it'll go from 0 to 60 and you won't even realize you're going that fast. And so it's kind of like driving in luxury. It's really nice. That's why I like the Maserati. It's a very nice interior. The seats are incredible. It's the feel. It's real, right? I mean, it's a real car. It's a real car. I couldn't sell cars because I could only sell high-end cars. And the problem is, that's a totally different person you're dealing with. But I like real things, and it's definitely a real experience to
Have you
drive
been
one.
up to
If you drive a Corvette, it's not a real car. It's a piece of shit. It accelerates really nice and fast, and it's fun to thrash about on the road if you like driving fast. But the ride sucks. It's a pain in the ass to get in and out of. The seats suck. The thing falls apart when it's brand new. I mean, it's just like buying a high-end Geo Metro. So,
Have you been up to the auto museum, like up in Reno?
I haven't been to that one. I've been to the one in Los Angeles,
It has,
the Peterson.
it has like Mr. Harrah's collection, the
Oh,
casino
really?
there. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm definitely going since I'll be in
Yes.
Reno in 2 weekends.
Yeah.
I went to Reno for the first time ever other than driving through.
They have a huge collection of like Rolls Royce. They have a Ferrari, which was an invention of Mr. Harrah. He took a Jeep from one of his dealerships, and then took a Ferrari engine from another dealership and just kind of lifted
Merged
that.
in together.
Yeah.
There's a guy up in Sonora who drives an old beater Volvo wagon, and he needed 4-wheel drive, so he took the chassis from a Jeep 4-wheel drive, and he just like put the engine of the Volvo on the chassis and the tranny and everything. It's totally sick. Have a good evening, ma'am.
Hi.
So the last thing,
Sales have Mercedes.
this rule of equal marginal utility lets us go back and mathematically prove the downward sloping demand curve. I'm not going to force you guys to see the mathematical proof of it, but we talked about it verbally at the beginning of class, right? So the reason what's really happening is as the price of an item goes down, in order to keep, if everything else stays constant in other goods, if the price of this goes down, then what has to happen to the marginal utility? To keep everything equal is going to have to go up, right? And so as you go down, right, you're consuming more, your marginal, sorry, it goes down. But as your price is going down, your marginal utility is falling as well because your consumption is going up. Okay, very simple. So that's a good way to end class, linking it back through demand curve. Next week, as I said, we go to the supply curve, talk about theory of the firm. It's going to be all of the math behind cost curves and how firms make decisions about how much to produce. It's not very difficult math, it's just a lot of formulas to kind of integrate into your mind. The easiest way to think about it is just the basic system. So we'll start with revenue and cost, and then we'll move back. So they're all very easy formulas.